Hi, I'm Tom Ravenscroft, editor at Dezeen, and we're broadcasting from the Dezeen studio space in London. We've teamed up with Autodesk to discuss the role of AI and data in architecture practice. Today, we're joined by Brooke Grammier, Principal and Chief Information Officer at Cannon Design. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Tom.
As well as Knut Ramstad, Partner and Chief Technology Officer for Nordic Office of Architecture. Hi, Knut.
Hello, Tom.
And Harlen Miller, Associate Design Director and Senior Architect at UN Studio. Hi, Harlen.
Hello, everyone.
And we're also joined by Amy Bunszel, EVP for Architecture, Engineering and Construction Design Solutions, Autodesk. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone.
And so Amy's going to start with a quick introduction to the panel and Autodesk. So take it away, Amy.
Thanks, Tom. I'm excited to be here today to kick off today's panel discussion on data and data-driven digital solutions for the architecture industry. At Autodesk, our purpose is to enable our customers to design and make a better world for all. And we believe that new technologies and ways of working will shape the architecture practice of the future. So why are we talking about this now? Well, the pace of change continues to accelerate. In the coming decades, we're set to face some of society's biggest challenges, from rapid urbanization to population growth and intense efforts to combat climate change. These challenges will impact the way people work and live across the world. On top of that, demands on the AEC industry are changing too. Data and AI enable new value to be delivered across building information modeling, or BIM lifecycle. And owners are expecting handover of data that is purpose-built to operate their assets. Projects have become more complex and are stressing timelines and budgets. Talent shortages are also straining already resource-constrained teams. But there's good news. With the proliferation of data, AI, and machine learning, the opportunity for the architecture profession to transform is huge, ranging from process improvements to connected workflows to distributed teams, and even how projects are contractually structured. Autodesk is responding to this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment with Autodesk Forma, our industry cloud for AEC. Forma will unify workflows across the teams that design, build, and operate the built environment. The first set of Forma capabilities targets the early stage planning and design process for buildings, with automations and AI-powered insights. Forma streamlines project setup by including relevant contextual information and simplifies the early exploration of design concepts. With Forma, architects can focus on outcomes such as sustainability goals and occupant experience using real-world context. And most importantly, Forma gives architects more time to explore creative solutions. It's not only about digital solutions, though. The adoption of new technology can also present challenges for firms. But again, there's good news here. Architects were on the forefront of many technology changes, moving from the drafting table to leverage CAD and then to BIM. With this backdrop, today's panelists will talk more about how data and AI will shape the architecture practice of the future. Now I'll turn it back to Tom to get the panel started.
Thanks for that, Amy. We're just going to quickly reintroduce ourselves. So, Brooke, do you mind telling everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Brooke Grammier. I'm a Chief Information Officer with Cannon Design out of Houston, Texas. Ultimately, my role is to ensure, from a technological perspective, our firm is focusing on driving that forward in the industry. I also spend a lot of time in industry organizations. We've started a consortium recently, and all of it, is really relevant to our topic today around data and AI, because as Amy had said, there's a lot of opportunity in our industry. And so my focus is on taking advantage of that opportunity.
Great. And Knut, do you want to just quickly tell us who you are, where you work, and I suppose why your interest is in AI, what your connection is to AI and big data?
Thank you, Tom. My name is Knut Ramstad. I'm the head of technology and sustainability at Nordic Office of Architecture in Oslo, Norway. I'm an architect by background, and I've been working with the implementation of technology in architecture since a couple of decades ago. So I'm basically interested in how AI and data-driven design can improve both the process and the product in architectural design.
Great. And finally, Harlen, same question to you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Harlen Miller, an Associate Design Director at the Amsterdam office. I've been working with Ben and Carolyn for about a decade now. I'm a designer at heart, but I think digital technology is kind of a trusted partner in our process. Our office has been around for about 35 plus years, which I think far predates any of the digital tools that we've been using on a daily basis. It's been Carolyn and Ben's philosophy to explore and invest in forward-thinking technologies and help expand those to kind of broaden our services, whether it's architecture, urban planning, urban interior design, product design. So I think we invest a great deal of time, energy, and resources into everything from photovoltaic companies, sensor-based technology in the built environment, playing around with kind of game-based software packages, machine and manufacturing. So I think this is all in hopes of broadening our services that we can offer. So.
Great. Well, on that front, to kind of we might as well start with the question. So 35 years ago, obviously no AI, maybe no digital design. So what are the major impacts that AI is having right now on the studio, and how you're changing your processes within the studio?
Yeah, I think whenever you start talking about data-driven design, you got to first kind of look at the typology of the data too. I mean, that could be internal operational data, it could be external project-specific data, or even one of our favorite topics that we're starting to look into more, which is actually this kind of physical operational post-occupancy data that we're collecting from the built environment. And so I think, the first two, the internal and the external, are more how do you organize your own, let's say, internal IP material, your branded content, how do you pull information from past projects and reference that? External data mostly comes from your BIM models, material passports. For instance, on some of the large Dutch projects that we do, like bookings.com headquarters that we just finished in Amsterdam, that was required to have kind of all material passports that help you keep track of future singularity or circularity and decommissioning of the building and how to recycle it. But I think the physical operational data, where you start to embed sensor-based technology into the process and almost offer service that allows you to kind of track and trace the data points within a built environment, is something that we've been playing with a lot. We got our urban team just finished a community of 1,500 families in the south of Holland here called Brainport Smart District, which allows the residents to kind of democratize and capitalize on their digital footprints. They network and share everything from joint energy generation, food production, water management.
So a huge amount of data then.
Yeah, and so I think that's one of the things where we see probably the most help coming along in the future, is if you can find a way or quicker tools to help you kind of connect those data points and start to almost curate a process within that too. We've also done it on one of our key projects, our Korean National Football Center, where it's a facility designed to kind of help train the next national football team for Korea. And we teamed up with the Johan Cruyff Arena, or the Dutch Ajax club, and some of their coaches and sports medicine specialists to kind of help track how the players move on the team or on the fields and the turfs, and track all that physical data within the individual too, in terms of how they're performing. So
nice. And Knut, is that kind of reflected in what you're experiencing?
I believe that firstly, many architects have been using AI for quite a while now without reflecting on it too much. Examples on this are the recent developments in, for instance, Adobe Creative Cloud. And the way we are now using automated commands, for instance, in Photoshop and other tools, is good examples of AI-based functionalities being embedded into already well-known applications. And we have seen other fascinating developments like NVIDIA's AI platform or Adobe's Firefly R&D labs. And these developments hint at what kind of AI functionality will be built into our host of applications very soon. And these tools would change the way we work, definitely. And in my view, these are examples of sustainable use of AI. But the designers must enable the workflows with AI, not just use it critically. And at Nordic, we have been using machine learning and AI for a couple of years now. New regulations, requirements, and requests from authorities, clients, collaboration partners, and users imply that the architects must handle ever more challenging responsibilities. And the use of AI-based tools can help us in managing this complexity. And to be specific, the primary AI-based technology Nordic has implemented in our workflows over the last couple of years is Forma, formerly known as SpaceMaker. And in total, we have now used Forma in approximately 40 assignments, particularly in our Icelandic office. These projects range in size from 400 to 160,000 square meters, and we have made use of different simulation capabilities. These vary from project to project and depends on both the size and the complexity of the assignments.
So I think you're broadly saying as architecture gets more complex and projects get more complex, we've got to figure out a way of dealing with that complexity, and AI or programs that kind of utilize the AI will be one way of I don't know, sorting the data or utilizing the data. And Brooke, is that just at Cannon Design, obviously a huge studio in the US, is that something that you're also dealing with, the kind of how you digest the huge amount of data that projects develop or create?
Yeah, the way that we kind of look at AI and data in our industry have two different sides to it. And one is, internally how we actually do the work that we do. And the other side is, our client benefits. And so internally, we've got thousands and thousands of BIM models with, a lot of data that we can mine, and we can use machine learning to really automate a lot of what we're doing, whether it's creating families or creating scripts that automate a lot of the construction documents phase, for example. We kind of see that phase as in a couple of years not being something we're doing anymore manually, that we're going to be automating a lot of that, which frees up our designers' time. The architectural industry struggles for time. Efficiency is a major problem. So it's really hard to spend time doing what we love to do, and that's designing and solving problems with our clients and doing it in a thoughtful way when we're spending so much time on all the day-to-day manual activities. So I think the thinking is the more you can automate the stuff that you don't want to be doing, get rid of all that stuff so you can actually focus your time and energy on the stuff you do want to be doing. That being said, though, there is a future where an owner could potentially have an app that they just say, I want a building on this corner, and I want it to have, 1,000 occupants, and I want 20 rooms or whatever, they put in their pieces and it designs something. I think that's also something that we're seeing more in the future, but I do think that the efficiency gain will get us to that place a lot faster.
Do you broadly agree with that? The kind of the behind the scenes maybe use of AI is going to push us towards better, more efficient, and I assume in your case more sustainable buildings, because obviously that's part of your job title.
Absolutely. I think it's really important in the development of the projects, but obviously in the future in the operational phase, which is really interesting. But the way we see it now is that our observation is that we produce too much data we don't use. We don't get a clear enough requests for what data is needed. We lose data in every phase as the project is transformed, and that we are not using our data in the right way. So in this sense, a cross-discipline strategy is important to avoid these issues, and it's really important. And the advantages would be better projects every time, learning from the data collected from each project. And we will obviously have happy clients and users who get the data they need and less wasted time on producing data that isn't used.
Okay, so again, it sounds like we're saying is both of you and Brooke are saying is kind of more focus at the beginning equals a better building at the end. Yeah, and in use as well, and
I
creating
think that
using
too,
that data.
And Harlen said this earlier, he kind of mentioned IoT and sensor data and things like that. Once the building is built, like ensuring that you can improve it over time, collecting, I mean, that's massive amounts of data, unstructured, tons of data that you're going to be collecting from how the building is performing. And so I think the idea there is you can use that performance data for multiple things. You can use it to improve the life of that building. You can use it to improve future designs for future buildings. You can use that data for a lot of things. It's just like there's a lot of data, right? So on all of that, a car is one thing. Like Tesla has a very minimal amount of parts to it. A building is a whole nother situation, right? And you're also looking at like the landscape around the building and like master planning and urban design, and I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I think that's why we get a little lost, and our industry is very, very, very far back with regards to technological advancement. And I think it's because it is so massive. It's like, where do you start? So
back to Harlen then, the kind of with that what we just talked about there about the kind of the data improving the building in use, and what you were saying about tagging the components of the building, has this, or will AI change the kind of fundamental relationship between the client and the architect? I mean, from the traditional client pays for a building, architect designs it and gives it to the client. Will that shift?
No, I think, I think we're gonna, we need to look for all the different things that kind of diversify the services that we offer. And I think the first thing we got to do is kind of get a better understanding of what architecture is, which is, it's not a product design delivery system. It's actually a service-based delivery system. And I think the more we kind of embrace that and kind of bring that to the forefront again, the more we're going to find all these different opportunities, open up. I think generally architects we're there to commission and extract and assemble all these different various ideas from either the client or the community. And I think it goes far beyond that simple production. You got to take the needs of the client. You got to take all the sub-consultants into consideration, contractors, municipalities, in the public's welfare. And I think we're called in to kind of make sure that everything runs smoothly and in line with the vision. I think that in itself is almost a performance piece. We're rarely brought in and given carte blanche to do whatever design that we want. And I think that's where we're going to find the opportunities to kind of bring back a little bit more of the human side of the design process too, and not be so worried about all the technical logistics. So,
sorry, and which particular part do you think the humans will be the humans? I say as if we're not humans. What particular part do you think we will still have a chance to kind of add value, I suppose?
It's going to be in that, becoming the client or whoever you're working for the community. It's going to be becoming part of their problem solver. You're going to fix things that they need done. And I think that requires a little bit of a good bedside manner, requires a little bit of a real touch. So
like a liaison officer between the client and the AI.
I say a lot that the computer can crunch numbers, right? And it's starting to become a little bit more available and sentiment, but there's something to be said for personal experience, empathy, like just even reading body language, right? Like things like that. Computer is going to really struggle to do those things.
So, I mean, almost there's a danger of buildings architecture becoming too, sterile doesn't sound like the right word, but kind of entirely driven by data. It needs, a human touch, to want a better phrase.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like you said, these aren't repeatable things, right? They're unique spaces that are being designed for unique needs. And so a computer is going to be really good when it's like apartment buildings, right? Because those might be more repeatable. But when you're looking at unique things, you need like that human experience of, what worked in the past, what didn't, like different, just listening to the client and coming up with something unique.
And you seemed pretty passionate about that as well, a pretty strong opinion. So I assume you don't believe that AIs are going to be taking all the architects' jobs, and we're not going to have the architect's role is existentially doomed.
I'm optimistic. Absolutely. I think it will be embedded into many of our tools, but basically this is about creating great relationships between the client, the users, the architects, and all the stakeholders. And one of the big benefits of having AI solutions is actually that you are able to immediately access all relevant data. And that empowers us to collaborate in teams with a more holistic approach. And this is resulting in decision-making processes that are not only more effective, but also more enjoyable and precise. And moreover, it simplifies the task of engaging in productive, interactive discussions with the clients and the stakeholders who are involved in the planning process. It's a much, much better process, much more transparent process. And very often we see that having these tools, you don't need to make presentations. You can just do it live. You can invite the people in, and you get the engagement, you get the enthusiasm you're looking after. So it's a much tighter connection between all the parties that are involved in the design, meaning that the traditional boundaries between the client and the architect is maybe a historic thing.
I mean, it sounds like we're very, or the three of you are very aligned in kind of AI will make better buildings, better processes at all stages. So maybe now's a good time to ask you first, kind of where we're here. What's going to be the major roadblock? What's going to stop the kind of this future where all buildings are designed between collaboration between people all over the world and AI systems, and we're all going to end up with better architecture? What do you think are the roadblocks that's going to stop that happening in the near future?
Obviously, we're in the middle of a hype now.
Yeah.
So I think that AI as a term will, it will be like Gartner's hype cycle, I guess. And I'm really fascinated by all these phenomena, like we had the Y2K, we had the .com, we had the VR, we had crypto. Now we have AI. So I think we have to be quite critical. This is not the end of the universe. These tools will be embedded into our, the way we work, the way we think. It might imply changes that are quite radical. But in many ways, it can solve our problems as well. And for the architecture firm, it's about cultural aspects and technological aspects. So I think any leadership in the architecture business now has to prepare the firm for a future that is more intricate and challenging. We don't really know what kind of direction this is going. Mm-hmm. So the primary obstacle lies in recognizing soon enough, I think, that embracing this technology is crucial, or alternatively opting for specific niches in the market. So you have to relate to it in some ways.
Okay, so it's being overhyped, but there's also a slight danger that we don't figure out how to use it. I know they feel like slightly two different things, right?
It's confusing times.
Okay, that makes sense then.
It's really difficult to predict.
Okay,
it's like the birth of the internet.
Yeah.
We don't really know the contours of and the scale of this. So, but for the architecture firm, we have seen in recent decades that it's a development towards a greater degree of specialization. So, and obviously the educational institutions may not necessarily adequately prepare the students for the new reality in the professional world. So to maintain competency in any firm, I guess, architecture firms must prioritize ongoing education and recruitment of new talent to ensure their staff remains up to date. And soon, I think we can anticipate an expanded range of professions becoming linked to architecture firms. And this is really exciting. And this could be roles like behavioral scientists, data analysts, coders, developers, etc. And I think this is important for any firm to really consider.
So it's kind of a studios and firms really thinking hard about how best they can utilize AI and what it means to themselves rather than kind of buying all the hype. And Brooke, is that something you broadly agree with, or do you think there are other major obstacles beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, I think to play off of what he was just talking about, the biggest obstacle is going to be the human being and the talent that is needed to drive this, right? So it used to be you'd have an architecture and engineering firm, you'd have a staff of maybe 10 to 20 IT people who really just set up servers and computers. And now you need data analysts and data scientists, you need software developers. So all these companies are now becoming like technology companies, if you will. Not to be overly dramatic about how I use that term, but you need skill sets now that you didn't typically need in the past. And there's a shortage of people that have these skill sets. And now we're competing with your Amazons and your Googles of the world, right? And so I think as the new generation is coming up, they're all very technologically savvy. They're coming out of school. This is very comfortable for them. There's a big chunk of the workforce today that is not comfortable, right? And so it's really goes back to that education, to helping people understand that it is not going to take their job. It's not a scary thing. It is going to just improve what we do. I mean, there's a lot that has to go into that, because I do think the two biggest roadblocks are, one, like the fear of your job being at risk, and two, just the fact that the skill sets that are needed are harder to find at this moment. But I think as time goes by, that will fade away. And so I don't know that it's a roadblock, like it's going to stop us. I just think it's going to be a temporary hurdle to jump over.
Sorry, I believe that I really agree. And I think the main problem is that finding the combination of design skills and deep understanding of technology is really crucial, because we see now that 250,000 people have been laid off lately in Silicon Valley, from Google, Amazon, and Meta. And so there shouldn't be a shortage of talent or people with a technology background. But what we are looking for is the combination of talented architects with a primary focus on design, creating great architecture, and a deep understanding of technology. So I think that this is the main challenge for any firm now.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about this at Cannon Design, is we've got this need for reversement, or like two-way mentorship at this point, right? It's no longer someone coming out of school sitting with the senior architect and just learning how to put a building together. Now it's, yes, they need to do that, but also it's the older generation needing to sit with the younger to learn about maybe new ways that we could be putting the building together. And that's a really hard thing, because it just changes the whole dynamic of how we have traditionally seen younger staff. Like, it's always been like, I'm going to be the teacher, you're the student. And now it's this two-way mentorship. And so we talk a lot about that at Cannon Design. We promote that in our mentorship programs. We really try to stretch our comfort zone in that way. But it's needed at this point.
Well, potentially it's a nicer power dynamic. Both sides have something to offer. Both sides want to be learning, so that seems like a nicer power dynamic than coming to a studio and being like, you need to learn from me. So Harlen, is that kind of what you're experiencing at UN Studio as well? A kind of obviously a large studio, so many people, kind of a cross proliferation of skills.
At some point, you're going to have to be confronted with these technological trends in some way, shape, or form. Either, it's a fact that you'll either have young designers entering the team that have either used this technology at their university or, have been introduced to it and they want to bring it to a project. It's also a fact that you might even have kind of a tech savvy client that's kept up on all the latest news, and they might come to you and say, hey, we want to use it. Or the third one is you could possibly be working under a project manager or a principal that says, hey, I saw this new thing, I want to use it, and this is the new ethos of the office. So I think, to run from it. And lastly, it's that software company component where the software companies are going to start to just house it right there in front of you too. So I think with those four factors, you're going to see it one way or the other, and you can't run from it. So.
And what role do you think technology companies should be playing in this? I mean, kind of in the past, maybe the role would be to kind of sell technology, sell programming, but now it feels like you need maybe a more integrated kind of everything.
I think that Autodesk and other companies should be working hard to improve the user friendliness of the software by developing more visually oriented interfaces. Because like today, there are too many overly technical UIs out there, and the lack of ease of use, that is leading architects to lose interest, specifically older architects or the seniors. But we do see, for instance, with Forma or SpaceMaker, that there is a promising step in the right direction. And we really appreciate the elegance and the intuitive UI there. And this is interesting because I think that AI can play a very interesting role here. Because I see that, in the interaction between man and machine, we are very primitive. And there's a significant opportunity to enhance the intelligence of the user interfaces of our design tools. A huge potential. And that will allow for smart customization and, primarily based on individual needs. And imagine if the software could identify and adjust to your unique working style.
That's interesting.
Not the opposite. And your preferences and requirements. And by doing so, we can limit the design obstacles, because that is the case today. And minimize frustration, enhance job satisfaction, and facilitate higher levels of productivity.
And it's interesting there because what you're touching on is the fact that it's again convincing the humans to come with the software. So kind of by having better interfaces, I mean, that's part of, not the software not being good enough or faster or strong enough, but the fact that you need to get the humans, the people on board, and to get them connected to the platforms, the software, the AI.
It should be intuitive. It should be fun to use. It should be compelling. And I think for the entire processes, including the user and the client and the stakeholder engagement, this is really important.
And Brooke, is that something you agree with?
When I look at something like Revit, and if you talk to firms like ours, we use maybe 10% of its overall capabilities because it is so powerful, and it's really meant for all kinds of situations. And so it's hard to learn. Like, it takes people a lot of effort to learn the platform. I think, to your earlier question, though, things that software companies could do, certainly simplification is kind of the rage, right? You can get on an app, you can do things super easy. You don't have to go to training to learn how to use your apps or your websites and things like that anymore. I think that, to me, is a no-brainer. That should be like the cost of doing business. But I do think the use of automation will help with some of that, right? Like, now I don't have to learn how to go in and resize windows and doors because it automatically does it for me. So the automation and AI will simplify a lot of what we do to make it easier. I think the biggest thing that technology companies can do, and he just touched on this a minute ago, is really that open architecture, that open framework that's standardized so that we can get to our data no matter which company which tool we're using from whichever company. We can tie that data together. Right now, I take IoT as an example. In our industry, companies are creating these sensors, and they're collecting data like air quality, occupancy, temperature, but I have to go to a separate dashboard and a separate tool to read each of them. I can't go to one single platform to see all of my building data, and that's a problem. And it's because they're architecting this closed architecture, and the manufacturing industry has not done that. They've kind of flipped it the other direction, and I just think we can learn a lot from other industries to be more open, to have our data more accessible in between all the different systems that we use. To me, that's the number one thing that could be done.
So seamless integration. It sounds interesting there as well. You're saying about the simplification, because obviously the kind of at one end you've got AI, which is insanely complex, and it sounds like the big problem is how do you make the insanely complex complexity of a current building or large like civil project, and using AI to simplify that and the way it's then shown to us who are more simple than an AI. Okay. The one thing that kind of jumps onto is kind of what we're talking about here is the as technology is so rapidly evolving, kind of how do you kind of future-proof yourself as a studio for it, or how do people future-proof themselves? Let's say you teach the kind of the principle how to use the software, and then in 6 months you've got to do it again.
I think there are obviously many ways we can opt to future-proof our businesses, but firstly, we must not lose the sight of the primary mission of our profession, which is to build a more sustainable society through exceptional architecture that transforms, inspires, and enhances the environments we live in. And technology should support us in this quest. It's not the primary goal of an architecture firm to develop the technology department or the IT. And to some degree, innovation comes from frustration. And currently, we are not still able to work the way we want to due to fragmentation in the tech industry. So we are yet to see designers be as creative and effective as they can. Okay. And currently, the architects are somewhat restricted by technology, but we do see a move in the right direction.
And so, how are you as a studio at using AI to make better architecture? Maybe give me a quick example of the way you think AI is achieving that goal.
We have been using Forma in approximately 40 assignments, and we have been made use of different simulation capabilities. These vary from project to project and depend on both the size and the complexity. And in some assignments, we have used the program with several fields to verify how well the project performs within a range of parameters. While in other contexts, we have used Forma more as an initial analysis tool regarding, wind, sun, daylight, noise, area metrics, and building potential simulations, especially in our Icelandic office. And being able to immediately access all relevant data through AI and machine learning empowers us to collaborate in teams with a more holistic approach, resulting in decision-making processes that are not only more effective, but also more enjoyable and precise. And moreover, it simplifies the task of engaging in productive, interactive discussions with clients and essential stakeholders who are involved in the planning process. But we're not only using AI, we're using mixed reality, VR, and other tools to really engage. So it's a mixture of technologies we actually use in that process.
Yeah, of course. Nothing exists in a silo. And Harlen, at UN Studios, how would you say the AI or big data is being used to create better architecture?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think if we can all agree that we're sitting on the edge of this kind of paradigm shift, and I think it's good not to be so caught up with what's happening right now, but also to kind of look a little bit forward. And if we agree that we're sitting here and this thing's going to roll over us, or perhaps already is, the thing to do is try to get out in front of it and find what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think we all, I got to pay tribute to all the project managers and senior architects that work at offices globally. We just came out of this kind of 3-year testing period where all of our interpersonal and business relationships were tested, they were strained. from the lack of human contact. And I think, if you go back to the early months of 2020, many architects woke up in the morning, they sat around their dinner tables, they began their day by talking with their teams remotely for the first time ever. Letting everybody know, hey, we got purpose today to kind of design something. And we teamed up with some of our clients, our partners, and then now are some of our closest friends. We all band together to start new work and new projects and positively move forward. And I think that I think is going to be the thing. If you just take those lessons learned from that tough period, and it was a very tough period, those are going to be the things that set you out, and I set you apart from everybody. And I think that those are the things we need to start focusing on. And I think it would be interesting teaming up with software companies if we could find a way to somehow merge the softer side of software, and try to find how to bridge those connections too. So, and I know it's a tough thing, but
so softer software, more people friendly, more user friendly.
Absolutely, but
Okay.
it's moving in the right direction.
And just to what you're saying about the kind of, we don't want to get too immersed in where we are now. What do you think the biggest impacts over the next kind of 10 years? How do you think your studio will change with data, AI, etc., technology? What do you think the massive change will be, or the big change will be from now to 10 years time?
Well, as much as I love tech, there's a bit of an irony with the tools that we use. Technology helps us progress faster. It helps us deliver the projects faster, whether it's complex shapes, forms, whether it's analyzing the natural environment. But it runs counterintuitive to the nature of the building industry, which is the second that you get past the design process, regardless of how much you've expedited it with technology, buildings kind of hit this kind of real world wall once they get into construction. And I think we can speed things up from the drafting boards or the computer screens as fast as possible. But I think once it gets down to brick and mortar, I think that's the thing that probably needs to start to elevate a little bit too, and get quicker. And I know there's a lot of different really smart people looking into things like that, how to kind of get the construction site to kind of pick up a little bit of speed too.
That's really interesting. Absolutely. I think the future, the negative productivity growth in the industry is we need to think very differently in the future, and that will open up new business opportunities for architects, new services more related to construction, production, and operations. So I think by nurturing this data sets, these really rich data sets that we produce that are not being used to the full extent that they should be, will open up really, really interesting possibilities in the future if we cooperate with other parts of the industry.
You can't take away from the fact that ultimately architecture is a physical thing. And so at some point, no matter how efficient we are in the digital world, it needs to translate to a physical world. I think what Harlen's saying is there's a kind of, that transition is obviously a pinch point that needs to be focused on. And then, Brooke, do you want to quickly tell us where you think the biggest impacts over the next 10 years will be, kind of both in your studio, and I know you've kind of got a wider network as well?
I think the big dream is you have this living, breathing design model, and it goes all the way from inception of idea all the way through to the death of the building, right? And so this is a model. We're no longer like designing in Revit, printing out PDFs, shipping those to the contractor. Then the contractor creates a new model. And then you know what I mean? Like, it's such an inefficient process from beginning to end. And so if we could use technology to start with a model, and everybody that's involved, the entire process, even through the facility management of the building after it's built and the management of that, and just the same piece of technology is traveling with that building through the whole phase, it would make all the things that we just talked about more efficient. And that's a big dream. There's a lot that goes into making that happen. That's not something that happens in a year or two. That's probably a 5 to 10 year thing, but it is something that several firms in the industry are a part of different consortiums and things that are actively working towards that direction. And there's startups and tech firms that we're partnering with that are also focused on that, I'll say, dream at the end of the day. I mean, the benefit of that is you're not only like the design of the building is going all the way through construction, then you're managing the building using this 3D model. Maybe you're using HoloLens as you're looking to do maintenance, and it's all connected to this model.
And potentially right through to the demolition at the end, and then reuse.
Yeah, it's interesting because if we really focusing on solving the crucial issues that we face today, I think, if we can see the development of using AI in the way we are actually planning for less use of resources, minimizing biodiversity loss, have effective land use analysis. So we can use AI to really solve the really important issues we're facing. That's the bright future.
An optimistic point to end on then. We're going to wrap up there. Thanks to our panelists, Knut, Harlen, Brooke, and I hope everyone who's watching found that as interesting as I did. Thanks.